Hello, folks. I'm just going to hang out here for a little bit as folks start to dribble in. Alrighty, folks. How we doing today? How is everyone? Are you able to hear me? That's an important question that I should get handled here. I have myself muted so that I can't hear me because that would cause problems. Hooray! Fantastic. So yeah, we're just going to hang out here for just a couple of minutes as folks come in. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'm happy to answer stuff. We can do a little bit of light AMA sort of things as we're just waiting. Then we're going to go over the lesson. Then probably some more AMA stuff. I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can answer. Debusser asking what's my judging background and what games. I certified as a Magic judge fall of 2014, and have been judging since then. I've picked up a little bit of. I technically certified in Flesh and Blood. I don't judge that game actively. Most of it has been Magic though. I so I started judging in 2014 with the idea of I'd do it as a hobby. Um, and then like a year and a half later, I was laid off from my job, just downsizing from quality assurance for a small game dev company. And I was like, you know what, I'll just do this judging thing until it stops like being able to pay my bills. And I kind of went hard. For example, I think in 2019, I was at a major event. Like I traveled out of state to a 2 or 3 or 4 day show. 45 weeks out of the year, I spent 52 days at my local airport. So I have been doing a lot of Magic judging for about the past decade, and it's been my primary source of income. Oh, I should change the name of the stream because I am a professional streamer. Thank you for catching that. In case you hadn't figured it out, I am not a professional streamer. This is pretty much the first time I've streamed to more than myself. I tried streaming the Eternal digital card game a long time ago, and got maybe like a total of 5 viewers. I've done some broadcasts formerly with Judge Academy. That's another part of my judge background. I was part of the team that ran the Magic Judge program after it transitioned to an organization, Cascade Games. And I did some broadcasts there and helped build that program up. But we have a great crowd here. Awesome. Yes, the VOD for this is going to be uploaded later. I'm going to make sure that the VODs are on the lesson page so people in the future who aren't able to attend this live will be able to see this and get all of your conversation and all that good stuff in the future. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and move some things over to the side and get started with what we're talking about today. How's that sound to everybody? Alrighty. We got that classic Star Wars swipe. Let's get into what we're talking about today. So, oh gosh, we have so many things that we're looking at. Welcome to the Judge Program for Star Wars Unlimited. I am really excited to have you all here. This has been something that we've been working towards for a while. We've been talking with FFG and trying to get into this, and it's really exciting to be here. We have conversations with the folks at Fantasy Flight Games pretty regularly. I'm trying to set up not quite weekly meetings, so I'm not bugging them constantly, but earlier on in the program, I'm going to be talking a little bit more frequently, particularly as we have a lot of feedback. If you're in the Discord, we have quite a few threads that have several hundred responses, and that's a lot of feedback that we want to pass on to the fine folks at Fantasy Flight in both OP, in organized play, as well as in rules and all of that stuff. This lesson and this lesson track are for the Apprentice track. Again, it's a certification for folks who are interested in the rules, want to dip their toes into it, and don't necessarily want to commit as much time and effort. I'm happy to slowly go over this. I'm going to keep an eye on chat if there are any questions. Why? No. PowerPoint, do what I want you to, and don't go through the presentation without me telling you to. Great, thank you. But, yes. Yep, we're going to just cover what was in the video posted yesterday, essentially. We're just going to go over it, talk about the same things. I'm going to talk more, because I like talking a lot, especially about stuff that I'm passionate about, and I want feedback and questions, and this is a great opportunity for y'all to say, hey, you have a mistake here, or that doesn't make sense, can you clarify it in the lesson? And then I can quickly update the lesson, change the video, and make it so that other people avoid that sort of confusion. So, let's dive in. What's a judge? Judges are, first and foremost, tell me what the mistakes are, rather than just telling me that I have one, so I can fix it. But what is a judge? Judges are members of the community. I think it's very important that we remember we are people who play this game too. We love this game. Judges are not separate from the community. Judges are not better than or less than or different. You should be playing the game. I think that's something that sometimes people get into a little bit of trouble with. Technology, work with me here. Come on. As you go through and become more and more invested in the game, particularly if you go really heavy and go into the higher level judging, if you're spending all of your time traveling to events, to work events rather than to play in them, there can be this split between your focus of learning the game and judging the game. And it's important to just remember to play the game, rather than just focus on being a judge. I know that a lot of judges in other games don't play the games that they're judging anymore just because they don't have the time to both attempt to master judging and master the game, and a lot of folks want to be masters at whatever they're doing. To to Ozcard. I think we could post the slides, but I don't want to have too much content on each page. I don't want to have the video, the slides, the text, and the live stream. Can definitely try to figure out how to embed those in a useful way so that you can go through them at your own pace, though. But, judges, while you should be playing the game and you should be passionate about the game, we're taking players of all skill levels. I am not good at playing card games. I'm not terrible. I'm just roughly, like, a little bit... I'm around average. Like, a little... If I go to play a competitive event, I'm going to lose immediately. Like, the last competitive TCG event that I played in, I went 2-7, and one of those was a bye, and the other one, my opponent didn't show up. So really, I went 0-7 and got lucky twice. I'm not good enough to be competitive. If I'm playing in a pre-release, I'm going 3-1 or 2-2 at the worst, sometimes 4-0. So you don't have to be good at the game to be good at judging, because strategy and understanding that and being able to make optimal decisions in a timely manner is very different from knowing how the cards work, knowing how to fix situations, knowing how to run tournaments smoothly, and most importantly, making sure people have a good time. This last bullet here about folks not being employees of Fantasy Flight Games or Cascade Games, to clarify, that doesn't mean you can't be employed by these organizations and then you are not allowed to be a judge. It is that by becoming a judge, you do not have that employee-employer relationship with either Fantasy Flight Games or Cascade Games, and players and judges shouldn't expect to have an employee level of access. Something that has happened to me many times over the years is a player will come up and be like, hey, you should ban this card because it's too good. And I'm like, my friend, I'm working at a game store. I don't even know anybody at Wizards. I don't know how to get a card banned. I don't even understand the format that you're talking about. I am so far removed from that decision-making process, it's not even funny. Players will tell you to change the rules or to change policy. And the best thing you can do there is just be like, thank you for your feedback. I accept it. I'll let somebody know. And then you let probably nobody know, or you talk with other judges and eventually it gets back. But you generally shouldn't expect to have a one-to-one relationship with folks from Fantasy Flight. Now, I do know that with other games that Fantasy Flight has run, many of their staff have had actually great relationships with their tournament officials and their judges. They are a very proactive organization, and they love this game as much as we do. They've been with it a little bit longer than we have because, they were designing it. So they're more than happy to talk about the games, but it's important to also be respectful of their time because they're working on it full time. They might not want to talk about it in all of their free time. So, what do judges offer? We, of course, have up first education and knowledge, helping new players learn the game and help experienced players play correctly. That's the key thing that judges offer, in my opinion. The ability to improve player experience. The way judges interact with the community is kind of fundamental. By simply having a certification, as our good friend Director Griffin is saying in the chat, if people know who you are, if you are identified as a judge, people will turn to you and say, hey, you're an authority here, you know things, we trust you. And something you can do with that power is make your community experience better. If you want to do this, you can, as a judge, start donating your draft chaff to a store collection bin for new players or for donation to schools and other organizations. You can make sure that the language that players are using is family friendly rather than the admittedly somewhat coarse language people can use in game stores from time to time. As a judge, you're not only able to teach people how to play the game, but people will model their behavior on yours, even if you don't think you're a role model, and you can help form the community that you want to form. Something that I'm trying to do here with the Star Wars Unlimited Judge program is a gates open, come on in mentality. We are ambassadors, and the more people who play this game, even casually, the more people play this game competitively, and the more events there are, and that means more opportunities for me to judge events. And I just really like judging events, so getting more opportunities to do that is something that I love. I see a question in chat from Neural Probe. Something you said just reminded me of being able to help players reform their questions so you don't end up giving hints on what the optimal play would be when they're unsure about rule. Yes, this is something that I want to talk about a little bit. As I have on this slide, judges are not overzealous rules enforcers. Our job is to make sure that players are doing what they want to be doing in the game. We're here to make sure that they are making legal gameplays, and that we're not giving strategic advice, but letting them do what they want to do is not giving them strategic advice. If a player says, can I Rivals Fall a Lurking TIE Phantom? The correct answer to that question is yes, you can Rivals Fall a Lurking TIE Phantom. However, that's not the question that they're asking. The question that they're really asking is, if I play Rivals Fall and choose my opponent's Lurking TIE Phantom, will it be defeated? And the answer to the question that they're really asking is no. And something to do there is not answer the question that they're asking, nor to answer the question that you think they're asking. Because you believe that they're asking one question, and it is not the words that they said. And so there's already an issue of communication between the two of you, right? You think that they're asking something that they are not using the correct words for. And so if you assume that they are asking, will it be defeated, and answer that question and say no, maybe then they were actually asking, hey, can I play Rivals Fall and choose Lurking TIE Phantom? Because all I have is a Bosk, and I just want to trigger this Bosk to deal 2 damage to something else. And so what you want to do is generally say, I'm not sure what you're trying to do. Can you clarify what you're doing? Curse Strife. Yes, this question about hidden information is one that we're discussing with FFG. As policy, you should not be answering questions about cards that are not open information. And there are some challenges with this because it then necessitates every player at both casual and competitive knowing every card, memorizing them perfectly. And one of the challenges with that is a player might take an action which is then illegal because they're not allowed to take that action or ask a judge a question about that action until they've begun to take that action. And so at the very least, we want to make sure that judges or players are able to ask judges about cards that they have in hand and actions that they want to take. But even more so than that, a more in line with FFG's philosophy of a more opening and welcoming environment includes letting players ask questions about cards that they believe they have in their opponent's hand or their opponents have in hand. And this is something that we're going to talk with them about and clarify. But if, like, say the Rivals Fall was in discard, and they were able to replay it or whatever, and it's hidden open information, saying, just, can you rephrase this? What are you trying to do? Similarly, something very important to do is when somebody's asking you strategic questions or asking them about specific cards, and if we are able to answer questions about cards in hidden zones, hidden information, something that is a very powerful tool is just say, let's talk away from the table. I know some people have concerns about a judge taking advantage of that and providing strategic information. But one of our core tenets is we are going to be trustworthy, and this is not something that judge or players should worry about. This is something that in many other games is very normal. That question of how does this work? I don't want to give strategic information away to my opponent. That is a very normal thing and something that we want to normalize. And I'm sure that with the weight that a lot of folks are putting on the integrity of the judge program, the concerns that have been raised, the allegation of judges are helping players should not carry weight. As Phantom Physics says, be careful how you feel about one player or another, and how you present that relationship. Even if you know one of the players and don't know the other, don't refer to that one player by their name unless it's known that you know them. One of my earlier experiences, I was playing in an event. I made some error. I called for a judge. The judge was my mentor who had driven me to the event. We were in a car together for like 6 hours. And she said at the end of the interaction, by the way, what is your name so I can write down the penalty? She very clearly, I know that she knew who I was, but she still asked, who are you? To make sure that the other player didn't feel like the judge already knew who I was. Just treat everybody the same, treat everybody respectfully, and be aware of how your interactions may make a player feel. If you're playing at your local game store, or judging at your local game store, rather, it's very likely that you'll know most of the people there. But if there's even one person who doesn't know you, make sure you introduce yourself to them. So that way when you're like, hey Seth, hey Brooke, what are you two bozos doing right now? Can you explain how we got to this game state? When they call you over, the player who doesn't know you doesn't take it as the judge is friends with both of these players and is going to shortcut some stuff, or the judge will call anybody they want a bozo, and now I feel kind of excluded because I don't want to be called a bozo. So just be careful of who you're interacting with and around that. Right. Carrying on with what judges offer. A consistent tournament experience. This is what the policy documents are for. This is what the master event document and the tournament regulations are for. This means that if I'm playing an event at home and I'm from Australia, or if I'm from Europe or Asia, and I qualify for the Galactic Championships, which is in the United States, in Europe, wherever it ends up being, and it's a completely different judge, and those two judges have never spoken to each other, but I make the same exact mistake, I get the same exact result. Similarly, if I have a question about an interaction with Crate Dragon and whatever, or Lurking TIE Phantom and whatever, I get the same exact answer. As a subsection of that, policy can't cover everything, just because the rules can theoretically cover everything. The rules are about the mechanics of the game, and the game is, while large, somewhat limited. Policy, on the other hand, attempts to encompass the breadth of everything a human being can do, and that's a lot. People can do very unexpected things. And so, rather than having hard rules for every single situation, we have philosophy that will guide us. And that philosophy is, we're playing fun, fair games of Star Wars Unlimited. We have some policy about a player looks at an extra card. If a player is supposed to draw one card from their deck and accidentally draws two and looks at two, that's a problem. However, if, say, you're playing in a convention center or a game store that has a fan on, and the fan blows by your table and flips over the top card of your deck, you have seen a card that you're not entitled to see. You probably shouldn't be penalized for the tournament organizer and store owner having a fan on to make it so that you're not sweating. And so policy philosophy would dictate nobody was actually responsible for that. Here's what we can do to fix it. We're not going to issue any penalty. And so one of the things that I'm going to try and do is get the philosophy from Fantasy Flight Games, get them to express what we want players and judges to be doing, and then express that to you as concisely as possible. But they have a technical document, a couple technical documents covering that. And we're here to interpret those documents. That's where the judgment part of being a judge comes in. The final bullet point on this page is the most important one. We're not overzealous rules enforcers. If a player says something like they're gonna tap a unit or something along those lines, that's not a game term. That's fine. We don't need to tell them that it's exhausted. It's nice if people use technical language, but we don't need to. If somebody is counting down instead of up on their base HP and their opponent's 100% fine with it, in fact, if both players are counting down instead of up, we don't need to force them to change their actions. We just want to make sure that people are playing fun and fair games. And the way we do that is generally enforcing the rules. We want to make sure that people aren't doing things illegally. If a unit should have been defeated and wasn't defeated, we can step in and say, hey, let's change that real quick. But we're not out to penalize players. To clarify how this applies to competitive as well, something to keep in mind is that most of the players and most of the errors players make will be wholly accidental. I know in my most recent pre-release that I played in, I made a half dozen mistakes because I just goofed here or there. I forgot to tap resources. See, there we go. I exhausted the wrong number of resources, or I put a unit into play ready instead of exhausted just because it wasn't in my head. We aren't here to penalize players. We're here to make sure that they're educated. Most players aren't cheating, and being too harsh is going to result in players quitting the game. I have a couple questions that I want to answer real quick because I saw them come up. So a question about card manipulations, like shifting cards in their deck like magicians. Right now there isn't going to be a conversation about that, and frankly my experience over a decade of judging is that is not generally a huge concern. There are some people who perform shuffle cheats. That is frankly a legitimate concern. What is a more significant concern is cheats of opportunity, where a player makes a mistake, realizes it, and doesn't bring it to anybody's attention because it's advantageous to them, and it's already past that moment. I'm probably not going to ever really going into detail into how to catch shuffle cheats. I mean, there's some stuff that I can talk about. There's a couple lessons, but it's not a priority, and the number of people who are doing shuffle cheats is lower than you might think. Part of how we address this is having opponents cut your deck after you shuffle it, so whenever you randomize a set of cards, the other player also gets their hands on it. And while that player could be doing a shuffle cheat, they would have to know the order of those cards before they can take those actions, and so giving them a randomized deck should help mitigate those things drastically. Nurgle Probe, the comment about people untapping before they resource at the end of turn, that's going to cause some issues, but we need to talk about that stuff later. Rads, yes, we're going to be able to watch this stream later. Going through chat. Fantastic. Great. Gotten through the questions. We're moving on. We're going to just make sure that this does what we want to. Right. Who can be a judge? I think most of the people that I'm talking to right now are more intense fans of Star Wars or Star Wars Unlimited than most players of the game in general. I think a lot of you are coming from backgrounds of competitive play, coming from backgrounds of playing in other games, judging in other games, as the first wave of judges for Star Wars Unlimited, I think you're going to more closely meet the mold of what a stereotypical judge is. That is, somebody who's deeply invested in the game, or somebody who's deeply invested in nerd culture. I don't know if you can tell from everything behind me. I like Star Wars a little bit. And that's a great place to come into judging. You have a lot of relevant experience and knowledge, and that's incredible. However, I want to bring in people who are from other walks of life. It's so valuable to get people who have different perspectives. Getting, like, something that I'd love to see is folks who organize sporting events, just like casual weekly, like softball leagues or soccer leagues, or football leagues, competitive players, casual fans. Some of the best judges in the world are people who just play with their friends in the kitchen table and have never played in a competitive event. Just people who like the game a lot. Parents, college students. One of the great things about judging is the wide breadth of people you might encounter, especially if you begin to travel to larger events. I have, at the same event, I met two of my greatest friends. One of them was like a 60-something-year-old defense contractor who was sending their kids off to college, and a high schooler who was about to go off to college for the first time. And the two of them actually were able to connect a huge amount, and like we all chatted, because the younger one was able to express their fears of going off to the older judge, who was able to express their fears about their children going off that they weren't quite ready to have with their family members directly. And so talking about the game and having this common language is a great way to get to know other people. I've met people who work for NASA. I've met people who work for all sorts of major game development studios, for major programming studios, a million teachers and programmers and lawyers. Surprising, people who like rules and people who like educating people become judges. It's a crazy coincidence. But there's a ton of nurses, in fact, are judges. That idea of caring and giving back to the community. We have bankers. We have just everybody from all walks of life. The two restrictions are you cannot be suspended from organized play. That is to say, if you have broken the Fantasy Flight Games code of conduct or Asmodee or are for some other reason suspended from organized play, you are not allowed to be a judge. The most frequent case of this is a player or as a judge, you have committed actions such as cheating or unsportsmanlike behavior, aggressive behavior that has made people feel uncomfortable and you need to be removed from an event. We want to make sure that judges are trusted, and if you're not trusted to be able to play the game, you're not trusted to be able to run the game. We also have this requirement of being age 18 or older. This is a requirement so that as a judge, when you are staffed to work events, and to be clear, you are providing value to somebody who's making money off of your work, so you are working and you should be compensated. You have to be over the age of 18 just to make sure that we're in line with global labor laws. I know in some areas you can be younger. I know that many states and some countries in Europe have younger ages of employment, but we have drawn the line at 18 to make sure that we're never in violation of those restrictions. Boop. Moving on. Moving on? Hello, slideshow. You were so aggressive earlier about moving on, and now when I say please move on, you don't want to move on. So, why should you become a judge? Well, you get to attend and work exciting events. Large conventions and galactic championships are a big appeal. I know that a handful of folks this past like a couple weeks ago, I'm sorry, I'm losing track of time. I'm doing a lot of stuff. Just a couple weeks ago, I know some folks in this chat and myself had the opportunity to work at San Diego Comic-Con, which I would not have been able to go to that convention unless I was running demos for Star Wars Unlimited. The Galactic Championship, I'm sure, is going to be a significant event. It's going to be very exciting. Regional championship qualifiers, sector qualifiers, and other large events that other event organizers and tournament organizers put on. Gen Con, Essen, PAX East, West, Unplugged. These are all events that you can travel to as a judge. Beyond that, there's your local store. Being able to shape your community and being a part of it, helping it grow, getting more people into the game, that is absolutely rewarding. I talk a lot about my experience as a large event judge because that's where the bulk of my experience is, but I spent the first couple of years working as the events manager for my local game store, and playing with those players regularly was incredible, getting to know them, knowing what decks they played, making fun of them when they made the same mistake 7 weeks in a row. And then one of the things that was really cool is watching my players that I had absolutely no influence over, and they did not include me in their playtesting because they were much better than me, but watching my players do well. In Magic a few years ago, one of my players qualified for the World Championship, and it was very cool for me and somebody from my local game store that had maybe 20 players for their weeknight events across the country at the World Championship, and we're like, hey, it's been a while since I've seen you, across the country and back home. You also get access to unique promos and exclusive merchandise. I have no details that I can share at this time. We have some cool and exciting ideas, and I know everybody says, oh, you're gonna love it, but I really, really hope that you will. Tazito, in the future, yes, you will be able to apply for conventions, Galactic Championship, and other large events through the Nexus. We are currently building up that infrastructure. As you may have noticed, the website is currently a little bit bare bones, and that's because we have been building it from scratch. While there are several other websites out there that support judge organizations, we wanted to build it so that it suited our needs, and we wanted to make sure that everybody who contributed to that development was properly compensated, and so we're building it up from scratch, making sure that it's brand new base code, making it all work, and making it work for our specific purposes. It just means it's going to take us a little bit of time until we get that event application in there, but that is a huge, huge feature that we are working on. I don't have a date that I can promise you. It's something that we want to have by the end of the year so that we can have it for future waves of planetary qualifiers, and so that I don't have to run a Google sheet being like, hello, I would like thousands of judges to apply to these events, because that's a lot. With regard to the question on compensation, I think there are some good ways to talk about it, and I don't believe that FFG will be able to talk about that just due to a lot of logistical and legal concerns. I think it's something that we at Cascade, if we're not able to talk about it and give guidelines, one of the things that we will be able to do is talk about how to negotiate with a tournament organizer or an event organizer yourself, talking with you to figure out what a reasonable rate for you is. Part of the challenge is what is a reasonable rate varies from person to person, and your skills do vary. A newer judge will have less experience than somebody who's been judging for a decade like myself, and to be blunt and pat myself back a little bit more, I do bring a little bit more to an event than a newer judge, just because I've experienced with tournament software, I've seen more things go wrong, and so it's very likely that I would charge more than a newer judge. I also am very busy these days with running a judge program and all that, and so I'm putting more and more value on my free time, and so I'm going to charge even more and be like, hey, maybe you should hire this other person who will be a more reasonable financial choice and will be a very, very good judge for you as well. Having exact structures is very difficult to do because a lot of tournament organizers provide pay in different ways. Some of them have leadership positions that get extra, some pay extra by level, some give you compensation for travel, others give you a flat travel stipend, that sort of thing. Judging for packs is super reasonable at your local game store. That's something that you can do. Something that I used to do was like run my like weeknight event, and by run my weeknight event I mean I hit create pairings and then had everybody look at their pairings and then answered 2 questions a night and played in the event for free. So getting an extra couple of packs for playing in the event, that was very reasonable because I was doing approximately 10 minutes of work over the course of playing in a 4-hour event. If you're, say, judging a planetary qualifier, you're going to be working from likely the beginning of the day to 10 or 11 hours later. If you're playing a 7-round event plus a cut to top 8, that's minimum 10 hours, plus you want to get there early, you might need to stay there late. Turnover is not going to be perfectly 0 minutes because that's not how games work and that's not how people work. And so you should be compensated for a full day of specialized work. With that being said, there's a lot of other skills that you can develop. Personal growth, sharpen your communication skills, develop comfort with public speaking, becoming a stronger leader, and these can tie into those negotiations. It's actually a skill that I've developed, having those conversations with store owners where they're like, I want you to do this work. And I'm like, I'm not really invested in this work, but I do want to, like, I'd like to do it, but if I don't get it, I'm not heartbroken. So I'm willing to negotiate, and I negotiated my compensation, and that has led me to, in my professional life, being more comfortable going to my boss and negotiating for my compensation there. I've developed a comfort with public speaking. Here I am streaming to I don't know how many people because I hid my face on Twitch and I'm not looking at that right now. But I'm broadcasting this globally. I've like called in, like I make announcements in event halls that have thousands of people. And I'm the same person who, when I started judging, my knees were shaking when I was talking to a total of 8 people in a local game store that's smaller than this room is now, being like, hey, it's time to play Magic. You have 50 minutes, please begin. Same person is here. I've become a lot more comfortable with public speaking. I don't think I've become much better, but I've become more comfortable with being a fool in front of others. So that's actually been really great for me. You become a stronger leader. You become better at giving and receiving feedback. A lot of skills outside of knowing the rules and policy have come up. In fact, I want to steal a story from one of my friends who isn't here. He was a judge for quite a while, and through a player that he met at an event, somebody that he was chatting with, got the opportunity to become a cook at a kitchen at a theme park. And his experience as a judge, even though he had no professional experience managing and directing kitchens, has brought him to, I believe he is a senior sous chef at a major theme park. And one of the things he did is he looked at, for example, the company policy documents for how they treat employees who are late to their shifts, or when employees made mistakes on the job. And he looked at it and he's like, there's no consistent philosophy here. And so he looked at Magic policy. He looked at the Magic the Gathering Infraction Procedure Guide. I kid you not. And then copy and pasted those words into the theme park's catering services employee manual. And it's like, here's the policy for warnings. This is the escalation path. This is when you get a written warning. This is when it's a verbal warning. And so he took those skills from being a judge to being a senior leader at a major theme park with no previous, like, directly relevant experience. A lot of people are like, well, you know how to cook. You haven't been in charge of a kitchen before. How do we know you can do this? And now people at that theme park are like, we would like to hire more people who are judges for card games. We don't care if they've never worked in a kitchen before. They have the skills that we need because they know how to run people around. To answer the question about sports referee experience is valuable in the TC judging world, 1000%. Absolutely, I would love to have that sort of experience. It brings a different perspective. One of the conversation that I have with one of my good friends is talking about the rules and policies for various sports. Whenever we're at an event and we're sharing a hotel room together, he'll put on some sport. I don't really follow sports. I am, you may have guessed, somewhat stereotypical nerd who doesn't follow sports a ton. But what I love doing is say, okay, explain to me the policy of this game. And so he'll talk to me about penalties in football or the penalties in soccer, the change in policy. There was some really fascinating stuff about how they changed how pitchers and batters had to interact in Major League Baseball. And I was like, oh, that reminds me a lot of our policy about slow play and who has to take an action when and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, absolutely 100% sports referee experience is not only valuable in the judging world and giving us that new perspective, but it will, I think you'll get a lot of experience back and forth. It's not necessary to do the level 0 or the season 0 valuation if you don't want to judge a planetary qualifier. I think it's useful. You might learn some interesting stuff, but it is not necessary. Great. We're moving on. And I'm looking at the clock. How do you become a judge? Hey, here's a fun question. We have the Judge Apprentice tier. You will complete 6 lessons. The first one is up. The second one is going live tomorrow. You'll pass a test on basic rules, and that's it. It is very straightforward to become a Judge Apprentice. A Judge Apprentice is a certification level that is a little bit different from the judge levels. We don't have it numbered because it is serving a different purpose. The purpose of the Judge Apprentice is to give people a less intimidating on-ramp into the program. As I mentioned earlier, the gates are opened. We want people to come in as aggressively as they'd like. However, the comprehensive rules are a very intimidating document, especially to people who aren't excited by the idea of reading 50 pages of rules. I'm definitely one of the people who, when like the family sits down to play a new board game, they're like, Jonah, you're going to read the rules for 5 or 10 minutes, however long it takes, and then you'll teach us the game without pointing to anything in the rule book. It is your job to read that. So Judge Apprentice is just very basic, knows the rules, can probably run a demo, because we're going to talk a little bit about that in tomorrow's lesson, but you don't need to be able to run events. At level 1, there's going to be a larger breadth of lessons. We're going to cover not only rules, but also tournament policy, which is the tournament regulations and the master event document, but also tournament operations, which includes stuff like using scorekeeping software, managing the end of the round, how to answer a call effectively, what sort of information you need to collect, and how to give it out. The test will cover those topics. You'll have to actually get some judging experience. Just going to your local store, there for a weeknight, answering some questions, putting in some rounds, that sort of thing, and then getting an endorsement from a tournament organizer, a store, or a level 2 judge beyond. Right now, there aren't any level 2 judges, so that's going to be a challenge. But pretty much any store that runs events will be able to endorse you, because what we're looking for here is, are you good enough that a store will want to have you back again? Will they say, please come back? And that's all we're looking for in the endorsement. It's going to be very, very straightforward. For level 2 and beyond, it's going to be more lessons, more practical experiment, endorsements, exams, maybe some written documentation. I believe I mentioned that for level 3, which is going to be targeted for planetary qualifier head judge, one of the things that we're going to consider requiring is a tournament report, where you as a judge talk about the logistical challenges that came up, any weird rulings, any policy interactions, that sort of thing. And the reason we're requiring that is, as a head judge of a planetary qualifier, something that is unfortunately likely to be a requirement if you judge several of those. Not if you judge just one, but if you judge several, the likelihood that you need to disqualify somebody goes up. And if you disqualify somebody, we need to know that you're able to explain the events of not only the game, but the tournament as a whole in an effective and clear manner, in a way that other people can understand what happened and make a judgment based on that. And so we'd require you to write a tournament report, explain what happened, and that lets us see that you have this experience without you having to actually disqualify somebody. And I hope that you never have to disqualify anybody, because it's not fun. With regard to the target number of judges in level 1 and over, I don't have a hard target. I want there to be, thousands would be great. My dream is that every single event that a store ever runs, every single store showdown, every single weekly, has a judge present in the room. That would be incredible. And of course, every judge isn't going to be, or any given judge won't be available every single night. And so you want to have a couple of judges who are available for every single store. There are a lot of stores. And so my dream is thousands of judges. It's going to be a little bit of a pyramid shape. My goal for level 3, and this is no promises, no guarantees, this is just a target. I would like to have, several hundred level 3 judges. I want there to be a couple of judges available to head judge any given planetary qualifier, and they're going to be distributed relatively geographically. I don't want people to have to travel quite a distance to judge one of those. And level 3 is going to be the requirement to head judge a planetary qualifier. So target numbers, several thousand. At the higher end, there's going to be a handful or two of level 5 judges. That's going to be effectively head judges for sector, regional qualifiers, and the Galactic Championship. It's going to take a couple of years. I'm going to share this goal with y'all. This is a personal goal of mine. Something that I've seen in other games, especially these newer games, is they take a lot of judges from other games. Like Flesh and Blood has a lot of import judges, or a lot of judges who transferred over from Magic. One Piece, Lorcana, a lot of judges are jumping between games because they have some very practical experiences. One of my goals is for the 2027 Galactic Championship. So the first Galactic Championship is going to be in 2025 because there's not one this year. The second will be 2026. The third will be in 2027. I want to have somebody who has no judging experience be a qualified head judge for the Galactic Championship in 3 years. That might seem like a not too lofty goal, but in my experience with a decade of experience, I feel like I am qualified to head judge a world championship of that degree. However, it's taken me a decade of doing that. It's taken me a long time being a full-time judge to get there. To get to where I am, it took many years of experience and hundreds of events. And we're not going to be able to get that. But I do want somebody coming from Star Wars Unlimited, and most of our people from Star Wars Unlimited being our judges, folks who are coming from other games who are passionate about this game. We'd love to have them. They can provide a spine that lets us build up a great pyramid. But I really want to build that up. And I say that as a Magic judge. I am likely going to be involved heavily in the judging and staffing of several of these major events because I'm trusted to a degree by Cascade Fantasy Flight Games, because in this role, not to pat myself on the back too hard. But I want to make sure that it doesn't become a clique. I want to make sure that it doesn't become these same 5 people do everything and nobody else has an opportunity. I want to make sure that even at the highest levels and the most prestigious events, if you work hard and you get the right knowledge, you're able to get there. It's going to take a while because I have very high standards, but I think it's something that we can do together. Regarding another question, thinking about a solution to try to keep engaged high-level judges in the game after several sets. Something that I think just keeps judges going on its own is the desire to remain masterful. Your ability after you stop judging for a while will drop over time. And so if you care about this, you will continue to pursue mastery. And while all judges should always be compensated for their work, this is something that I'm going to continue to stress forever and ever. The compensation isn't the best compensation in the world. We're not doing this for the money. We're doing this because we love this game. We love judging. We love helping others. We love teaching people. And that drive is what will keep people engaged. Developing mentorship systems so that judges can help each other grow is something that I want to do. Helping people figure out who they are as people and what strengths and weaknesses they have and how to utilize those and take advantage of their strengths and how to build around their weaknesses or improve on their weaknesses. Getting the high-level judges to buy into finding their replacements, finding mentees. I want all of you to stay in this and enjoy this and love this as much as I do. It's an incredible experience. And I'm going to be talking about this more in one of the lessons. But yeah, I think a lot of judges will naturally be engaged. This ties into a question that Sertar asks, which is discussion on maintenance or level upkeep. We're planning on having some sort of maintenance. It will take some time until we develop that. For those who aren't aware, one of the things that we're going to do is once you take your test, let's say you pass the test in October or November, whenever we release that level 1 test, and now you're tested on the knowledge for set 1, set 2, and maybe set 3, right? And in 4 years, game's still around, another 12 sets have been released, but you haven't been released on, or you haven't been tested on 90% of the game's rules. We want to make sure that there are small tests to be like, hey, do you know how these new mechanics work? Do you know how exploit works? Do you know how coordinate works? Do you know how mechanics from Legends work? Do you know how mechanics from like Power works? Like sets way down the line. And so we're going to have some sort of maintenance. For the lower levels, it's likely going to be, have you continued to judge events? If so, you've probably been exposed to these cards and kept up with your knowledge. That's probably good enough. Having some sort of test to just have a marker on your profile on Nexus, just being like, hey, I've judged X events this year and I am up to date. I don't think we're going to be taking away your certification if you don't complete those maintenance exams. But if you're looking to, say, advance into new roles, like if you've been judging at your local game store for several years and you want to start going to larger events, it might be a good idea to take some of those maintenance exams so that a tournament organizer, event organizer looking at your profile is like, oh, yeah, this person has been keeping up with their stuff. They're up to date. It's not just they tested in 2024. It's now 2029, and I don't know how good they are. It's they've kept up and up to date with these tests. Language-specific content. So we want to make sure that there are judges who are skilled in who are able to take calls and investigations in native languages that the game is published in. Off the top of my head, that's English, German, French, Italian, Spanish. I believe that's it. Please correct me if I'm missing one. But we do want to make sure that folks are capable judges who are native speakers for other languages one of our longer term goals is translation and localization of all of our content. Getting the text translated is relatively easy if we're willing to take a subpar job. I can take these scripts, throw it into Google Translate, and give you something that is vaguely similar to what I said. However, I want to have audio available for those lessons in all of those languages as well, and getting translation for those languages is not cheap, especially if we want quality, and we do. I would rather take a little bit more time and have quality translations and localization as opposed to relying on Google Translate for everything. But yes, absolutely, one of our goals is we are an international organization, and while English is the base language of the game, that's the language that the rules and cards are initially written in, and so the meaning of the rules and cards in English will take precedence over other language. We want to support everybody who wants to play the game. Levels. This is tying a little bit back into what we were talking about previously. Levels are a tool to quickly communicate information to tournament organizers and event organizers and other judges. A lot of people have asked about badge systems where you essentially collect badges or certifications like various scout troops. I also recognize that we're hitting the hour mark. I'm sorry we're going long. As I said at the top, I like to chat a whole lot. But a lot of people like badges of like knows the rules at a basic level, knows policy at a basic level, knows how to complete a deck check, knows how to launch a draft, knows how to run a sealed event, knows how to do a sealed swamp, which is something that we'll talk about at some point, is good at making announcements, knows how to do this, knows how to do that. That's all very well and good. However, if your profile is a list of 72 different badges, a tournament organizer is going to look at that and their eyes are just going to glaze right over. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, Level 4, Level 5 is a lot easier for somebody from the outside who doesn't have a level of experience to immediately grok and understand. Why we're using numbers instead of something more flavorful, Padawan and Master or Darth, those, one, licensing, two, those are specific terms to this game, and some folks who, I know many game stores, one of my favorite local game stores had a bunch of Magic events. The store owner knew nothing about Magic. Magic was how they made most of their money and knew nothing about Magic. All they cared about was Warhammer. Magic was supporting their Warhammer hobby. And so having flavor terms, while many, many more people are familiar with terms from Star Wars than other, not only do we have those licensing concerns to deal with, but this is a tool for communication rather than a tool for flavor. Something we might do over time is create those flavorful badges and certifications for use internally so that you can say that you're master rank or on the council or that sort of thing. But that's to happen later. Another reason we use levels is for a lot of people, number go up is fun. Aspirational targets for personal growth and improvement. I can't speak for everybody in chat, but a lot of people play video games and like making their damage numbers go up, their character level go up, etc., etc. Making the level go up feels good. However, a level 1 judge is not a worse judge than a level 5 judge, just straight up. There are many truly, truly excellent judges who have found their home at level 1 or at level 2. Levels indicate a floor and not a ceiling, and it evaluates specifically rules, policy, and tournament knowledge, and doesn't evaluate your ability to perform in customer service and that sort of things. I've learned so much from judges who are lower level than me, who are less experienced than me, because so much of judging is your personal touch with people and not just memorization of rules and knowledge. But we're not going to be doing Imperial ranks. This is something that a lot of people have asked about. A lot of people are like, what if we used Imperial uniforms for the Judge Program uniform? This is something that I'm going to push back on. I'm going to be the fun police here. Something that I want to avoid is the impression of judges as authoritarian law enforcers. And something that we talked about before, how we're not strict enforcers of the law. There's some connotations of, say, stormtroopers and Imperial officers that I'd like to avoid for the Judge Program. I know that it's just plain dress up, but for some people that meaning is apparent, and that's something that we're going to just try and avoid here. Plus, getting like rank bars for everybody, especially to make them look correct, and I would want them to look correct because what do we do it if we're not? That would cost a lot. Level 6 is not CEO of Cascade Games. If anything, I'm level 6, but I'm not level 6. I have the same certification level as all of you. When the tests come out, I'll probably claim dibs on the tests because I will have written them, and so I hopefully will have passed them. But Tim is not a certified judge. He's just my boss. Very good at running organizations, has a lot of great business connections. We're probably going to do an AMA at some point in the near future. But level 6 doesn't exist for now. Alright, what's next? The Judge Apprentice track. We have the rest of these lessons coming out in, I believe the target is next Friday, which I think is the 30th. The Judge Apprentice exam will become available, and that's the first opportunity for certification. Again, this is a relatively minor certification. The reason we're releasing this now, releasing this first rather than level 1, is because we want to build up this base wide and broad at the bottom and build up from there. And for me, part of the way I'm doing this is it's hard for me to comprehensively build the entire program, and particularly if I'm starting in the middle, and so I'm going to build from the ground up. By writing these lessons about the Judge Apprentice level, I know what is the expected knowledge for Apprentice, and then I will soon know what is the expectations for level 1 and have that concretely in my head. The first level 1 lesson will be the following Monday, which is September 2nd. Then, of course, you can always join the Discord. No, slideshow, go back to being a slideshow. Thank you. The Judge Program is always growing. We're going to have information about advancement, maintenance, etc. That's always going to be released. We're always open to feedback. And by always, I mean whenever I'm awake. If I'm asleep, I won't answer to you. But please, if you have any feedback, please hit me up on Discord. You can find me through the Star Wars Unlimited Judge Discord, or you can email me at jonah@cascadegames.com, and I'll respond to you as soon as I get the opportunity. Being available to answer your questions is important to me. Please do not feel like you're imposing on me. Frankly, if I am not working, if I don't want to answer your question at the time, I'm going to ignore it until I have time, until I clock in, sit down, start working, and then I'll answer your question. I'm going to answer a lot of questions just when I'm like, oh, hey, I'm waiting in line at the grocery store to pay for my snacks. I got a couple notifications, somebody's asked a question, I can answer them. To answer some questions in the chat. When will the Season 0 results be out? We're going to be closing that on the 28th, so next Wednesday. That's just 8 days from now. After that is closed, we're going to release an article, likely Thursday the 29th, that goes over all of the answers, what the correct answer is, what sort of information we were looking for with that question, and the philosophy behind that correct answer. A lot of the questions in the rules and policy section, there's a correct answer, or in the rules section, there's a definitive correct answer for everything that is available. There's information that you can find that supports all of the rules questions. Policy is harder because, as we were mentioning earlier, a lot of it is based on how humans interact, and policy can't cover everything humans do because that's a lot of data, and printing it out would be untenable, and storing it anywhere would be untenable. And so what we're looking for there generally is, what is your philosophy on running events, and how does that match up with Fantasy Flight's philosophy? it's a challenge to answer those questions because that philosophy hasn't really been pushed many places, and unfortunately Cascade Games is not going to be able to push a lot of information in that regard in the next week and a half. We're looking for people who have, for lack of the better terms, for these first few events, the right reflexes. I do like the point that we're more like Mandalorians than any other organization. This is just going to be me putting on my nerd hat for a second that we all share. We have the same hat, every single one of you. But yeah, Mandalorians are willing to accept anybody. They're mercenaries who are doing jobs across the galaxy, doing what needs to be done. They're not beholden to any particular tenet or faith other than working together. I'm using the Legends canon Mandalorians, particularly Karen Travis's stuff, because that's what I like. But yeah, I like the Mandalorian comparison. Exams. Yes, exams are open book. The books for explicit reference are the comprehensive rules, the master event document, the tournament regulations. You're also able to look at other sources of information. You're just not allowed to ask other people directly. With regards to cooldowns or probation periods on the test, yes. There will be a cooldown on the test. Ideally, our first... It's probably going to be on the order of a few months to begin with, just because we don't have a huge pool of questions, and we want to make sure that you're not just spamming the test, taking it over and over again and hoping to pass. We want you to take time to study, learn, and attempt again. The cooldown or probation period for the Judge Apprentice test is going to be relatively short, probably in the order of just a couple of weeks. For level 1, because it's going to be a comprehensive and longer test, that means that it's going to be harder for us to write a broader pool of questions. If we have only one pool of questions, for example, if it is going to be the same 25 questions for every candidate and every candidate who takes it again, the cooldown is going to be much longer because we don't want you to just memorize the questions, look them up beforehand, and then take the test and be like, I did it, I'm perfect. I don't think most people are going to do it, but we want to have these precautions in place to make sure that it's not super easy to do. We don't want to encourage people to take these actions. We want to just put in enough friction to make sure that it's not possible to do. Of course, two of our major goals are, one, getting enough questions into the question pool so that we can reduce the cooldown. If the exam is 25 questions and the pool of potential questions is 25 questions, it's probably going to be close to 6 months. If the pool is 500 questions, we can probably have that cooldown be as short as 1 month. So it depends very much on how many questions we have. It'll take me a while to write 500 questions. But the probation period and cooldown will decrease over time as we create more content and we have better testing tools. One of those testing tools right now, the evaluation is on Google Survey or Google Forms because that's a very easy tool for us to use. However, we're developing one for the website that will be integrated directly into your account. Likely for the Judge Apprentice certification, I'm going to have to manually approve everybody's grades, and I'm going to submit a big old spreadsheet of these are all the people who are Judge Apprentices, and then that'll be updated in a big bulk wave. We're hoping that by the time lesson or level 1 exam is available, we have a built-in exam tool that will also have the opportunity for you to look at not only the cards in the question, but also look at just the text of the cards in case that graphical interface is a little bit overwhelming for you. For DT the Sniper, on the exam, if for the Season 0 application, you get the 1 chance at it. If you don't do well on that survey, do not despair. That certification, as we mentioned on the Season 0 page, is just for the October wave of events. We're hoping that for future planetary qualifiers, we'll have judge certifications available, and then tournament organizers and event organizers will be able to post solicitations for staff online and be able to get judges to their events without us having to go through and manually make recommendations. link to the most current rules that's available in documents and resources in the Discord. What type of snacks are we talking about? I mean, I have off-brand Oreos and off-brand Doritos from Wegmans. They're really good. They don't taste like Oreos and Doritos. They taste like some other kind of cookie and Sun Chips. Very delicious. Is it planned to do something like a judge map to get in touch with other judges in the neighborhood? Kind of, yes. One of the fields that we're going to ask for in your profile is your location, and we're going to authenticate it probably through Google Maps. You'll put in your address, and then it will likely only show your city that you live in and not closer than that. So if you're living in a larger urban area, it might not be a particularly useful tool for finding neighbors, but we don't want people to get access to information that they shouldn't. With regard to that, all information by default will be private, because we are going to be compliant with global privacy laws, and we do, in fact, genuinely respect your privacy. There will be a notification at the bottom being like, hey, you have these particular items hidden on your profile. You really should make them public if you ever want to work an event, because a tournament organizer is less likely to staff somebody whose username is just some random username like Muskrat or Whale Goliath, which are two that I use, versus somebody who's like, my name is Jonah Kelman, I live half an hour away from your store, I've worked these 12 events in the past 6 months. That person's going to be like, oh, I now have an idea of who you are. But yes, GDPR compliance is something that we're well aware of. We have some experience with it from running a judge program previously with Judge Academy Magic the Gathering, and we're going to make sure that it's very clear on your profile. When you create your profile, these fields are going to be automatically made private, and then we're just going to have a little pop-up that says, hey, would you like to make sure that you can be found by tournament organizers? Make sure that these fields are public, and we'll have them preset public. All you do is hit OK, and that information will be public, but we still will remain some degree of private, so it won't be your exact address. It'll be your city or region or something like that. Question, as a judge, if you see a rule violation during a game and no players react, is it your job as a judge to prevent and do a rollback for this game? Yeah, so if you see somebody make a mistake, let's say they tap 3 resources and play something that costs 4, and then the other person goes, okay, I'm going to play this, you should absolutely say, hold on a second, I just saw that you paid 3 resources for that. Am I missing something? First of all, always check to see if you're missing something. It's very possible that they have like a Jabba or a Bib Fortuna that's reducing the cost that you just didn't happen to catch. Or maybe like there was a Bendu that attacked that was then defeated, and they're accounting for that cost reduction, but you don't see it because it's covered up in their discard pile. If you see something go wrong, check in with the players and see if something actually has gone wrong, and then correct it. It is better to step in and correct something as soon as the mistake has been committed than to wait and see how bad it gets or if players notice. If, for example, you don't make a comment about them potentially underpaying for a card, a couple of turns go back and forth, and then they spend all of their remaining resources to cast something large, decisions may have been made based around the number of resources available, and it makes it much harder to rewind the game state to the correct legal game state because of the revealed information or cards changing zones. And it's not a great place to leave as is because so much damage has been done. If you catch it as soon as the error has been made, then we have less fallout from that. If you catch it before a player has a chance to catch it, so somebody taps 3 resources, plays a card, and you're like, hey, by the way, doesn't that cost 4? Or am I missing something? They're like, oh, right, it does cost 4. Always keep your radar up for cheating and see what sort of advantage they're gaining. But generally, if you're catching it very quickly, I would not be issuing a penalty there. Would Open Book also include the Star Wars novels? Yes, I will absolutely allow you to include the novels, graphic novels, etc., etc. Nope, Gentle Giant, I'm sorry. Legends canon is the priority. That's me and where I stand. Do we have time to answer all questions? I'm just here working now. We're pretty much done with the presentation, but I'm happy to just answer questions as I keep on going through them. Is there a max wrong percentage on the exam? On the existing evaluation, there is no bar for passing or failing. Because this isn't a certification and we're just looking for the most qualified folks, we don't know how people are going to score. And we don't have enough time to iterate on this evaluation before we need to make decisions. And so we're going to be looking at the folks who are doing the best. However, even if you nail all of the questions, if you're not available on the right date, or maybe you don't have you don't present the right attitude, that's stuff that we're taking into account. We want to make sure that folks are valuable boons to the community and to the planetary qualifiers that they'll be judging. For future exams, there will be time limits and passing scores. Those are not going to be set in stone. Those will be based on iterative development. So it may be possible that the first test is an 80% pass. You have 60 minutes to answer 25 questions. And then everybody takes the test and everybody gets 100%. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm a good teacher, but I'm not that good of a teacher. Let's add a couple harder questions, and we're going to have to bump the passing rate up to 95% or something along those lines. Or knock down the time. One of the things that we want to be able to test is, are you able to answer a question in a timely amount of time? Because when you're taking real judge calls, we don't want you to take forever to answer a question. But we do want you to be able to go through the resources and find stuff quickly. And so having a open book timed exam is more indicative of the real scenarios that you'll be hitting as a judge. It's not a perfect simulacra because it's a question and all of the details that you need to know to answer that question are there in front of you, and not information that the players have forgotten to tell you, even though it's vitally, vitally important. Will the test contain rules and policy? Judge Apprentice will be just rules. All tests beyond that will include rules and policy. Just going through this. If you can't change your server nickname on Discord, you may have to accept the rules. Oh my god, the number of times somebody comes up to me and they're like, hey, Judge, 2 rounds ago, in round 1 of this tournament, it is now round 3, I think my opponent may have made a mistake. Can you investigate? I'm like, no, there are no cards that I can look at. There's nothing that I can base a discussion on other than going to the person being like, hey, did you cheat? Information about the Season 0 Season 0 evaluation. Again, it's not a level or certification. The test closes on the 28th. We'll be making a public answer sheet on the 29th. Folks are probably not going... You should not expect an email with an individual grade. You should have the answers that you've submitted, and you'll be able to compare them and grade on your own. Tests will be translated eventually. That is one of our higher priorities. I'm not sure how we're going to handle it initially, given that we won't have that localization immediately, but I think it is reasonable to me that having tests be localized be a higher priority than lessons localized, because there are folks who can teach you in your native language. I am not actually the only person who can teach you how to be a judge. There are so many talented folks in this community who can help out. Alrighty, that is the last of the questions. That's all I have for now. Does anybody have anything else on topic, off topic? Otherwise, I'm going to disappear in just a couple minutes. If you're chosen to participate as a judge at a First Wave Planetary Qualifier, we're going to be giving them selections. Our target date is September 2nd. So the Monday, 2 Mondays from now? Yeah, 2 Mondays from now. So a week and a half, a little bit more than that. At that point, we're going to give them a list of our recommendations. They're going to select from that list who they want to staff, and then they'll reach out to you at that point. So I would expect during that week. Can I show you Lego? I mean, all right. This is going to be the short version. There's a bunch of stuff over there. There's some stuff over there. There's, in the back, you probably can't see it because the lights aren't on, but there's some more sets back there. At some point, if there's community demand for it, we can do a show and tell, but that's not what today is for. But I can do a show and tell later. Oh, you can't see me? That's because I haven't transitioned back to my face. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We transitioned back to my face. I can point at stuff. I exist now. So there's some stuff here. There's more stuff over there. There's more stuff up there. And then right there you can see a couple of things in the background. At some point we can do a show and tell, but that will be a while from now. Aztec, to answer your question, once you get your certification, there will be some amount of maintenance. Barberry, the target numbers are global, absolutely. That it is going to be, like, I don't know how large organized play is going to be. To be fair, Fantasy Flight doesn't know how big organized play is going to be. It is going to grow, I think, pretty drastically over these first few months, especially given the fact that pretty much every planetary qualifier has sold out almost immediately or will sell out. And so we'll see how big it is in the future. Once we get that information, we'll see how big the judge program needs to be, and from there we'll see how far it can grow. One of the challenges that will exist at some point is the number of people who want to be a judge will be larger than the number of people who are needed to be a judge, and so there will be fewer opportunities than people who want to take those opportunities. That's a problem for me to solve down the line. If anybody has any clever solutions, we can talk about that. But that's something we'll talk about. With regard to translation, that's something that we're going to have to look into. Again, as mentioned, one of our ideals is all work is compensated appropriately. We currently cannot afford for translation and localization, but in the future, frankly, I would rather have fans of the community fans of the game do translation instead of some localization community. Yes, they're going to probably be more timely and punctual. However, they're not going to understand the mechanical terms as well, and they might not cross-reference the terms on cards with the rules and all that sort of thing. And so having community recommendations would be great. I'm not sure what you mean by limits on L1, L0 judges. There's going to be no limit to the quantity of judge apprentices. Pretty much anybody who wants to take the test online can take the test and become a judge apprentice. So an infinite number of human beings can become judge apprentices. To become level 1, you need to get either a store or a level 2 or higher judge to say, this person is a reasonable human being, they're a real person, I trust them to run events. And so we're not going to write down a number and be like, it's only available to the first 2,000 people. It'll be available to the number of people who can earn endorsements. My local game store that I was talking about earlier that had events with 15 to 20 players, that store had 20 or 25 certified judges in it. We had more judges than players. Most judges were also players, but stores can become hubs for judges, especially if you, for example, want to take these lessons that I've created and run them in your local store for people who are interested and talk about them. That is a great resource. Taking lessons and running in-store lessons, doing that sort of mentorship is great. Will Cascade come out with recommended compensation for the tournament organizers to look at? That's not something that I think we're going to be able to do, because that gets a little bit too close to talking about compensation, and that might put us too close to an employee-employer relationship that we're not able to afford. Why are planetary events limited to first come, first serve over qualified players? That is not something I can answer. The way players are selected, or entry is chosen for planetary qualifiers, is up to the individual stores. Awesome. Great to hear it, Rads. Love to hear it. What do you need for endorsements, and where do we send them once you have them? That information will all be available on Nexus as it becomes available. You will be able to submit your endorsement, or the tournament organizer will be able to submit the endorsement through the Nexus themselves. Guidance for what an endorsement should look like is something that we will be sharing closer to that point in time. It is the baseline endorsement for level 1 will essentially be, I trust this person to run an event at my store. I believe they will make a good level 1 judge for Star Wars Unlimited. That is what an endorsement requires. If you want to go more in depth and be like, this is the person's strengths, weaknesses, areas of improvement, this is what we want to see, you can have a little bit more. Lessons will be on the Nexus. Yep. If you go to nexus.cascadegames.com/lessons, we're going to have the repository right there. There should be a drop-down menu in the nav bar, and I'm also going to link them in the Discord whenever I'm posting new lessons. Awesome. I've been here for about an hour and a half now, so I'm going to give you all one last chance for questions. Other than that, thank you so much for showing up. If you have more questions and I disappear before you ask them, go ahead and toss them in the Discord, toss them in general chat, wherever you'd like, and I'll get to them as soon as I can.